storytelling. In this podcast, we will be looking at storytellers, stories, and the reasons that oral storytelling is important in our world today. You would think with all the technology we have available that stories do not have a place anymore, but they are needed more than ever. For in storytelling is where we find truth, we find reality, and we find the heart of what it is to be human. Welcome to the heart of storytelling. My name is Alyssa, and let's go on an adventure.
Welcome to this week's episode. This week we speak with London storyteller Vanessa Woolf. Vanessa is a real mover and shaker by the sounds of things and has initiated a lot of different projects in London and working with her community within the spaces that she's in, and I found it completely inspiring to have a chat with her about the work she's doing in storytelling, and I hope you do too. Here's Vanessa. Welcome to this week's episode. This week we're coming to you from sunny London where we're speaking with Vanessa Woolf, who is a storyteller in London. So I'd love to hear about your storytelling journey, Vanessa.
Well, thank you for asking, and it's really nice to be here. I started storytelling in 2009 when I found myself in a pretty desperate financial situation. I'd previously been an electrician in the film industry, and I worked very successfully working on movies like James Bond movie or the Harry Potter movie, and or on commercials and pop videos and things like that. But I'd had my children, and I was just finding that the kind of relentless atmosphere of the film sets, I just couldn't hack it, basically. I couldn't do the 18-hour days and then come home and do the night feeds and all the rest of it. So I couldn't do that work anymore, and that was all I was qualified to do. And I don't know whether it was that experience on my CV, but I couldn't even get like jobs stacking shelves in supermarkets. Nobody would have me. I think they just thought, why would this person who'd done all this want to come and stack shelves? So I literally couldn't get any job at all. And I spoke to my mum, who's a journalist, and she said, she's also an author, and actually now she's subsequently had some books published, but at the time she didn't. And she said, you're a writer, why don't you use your writing in an applied way? And I thought, well, the thing I like best is talking, and I wonder if you can get paid for that. And lo and behold, I found out that you could. And so I started off kind of doing whatever storytelling. I just said to everybody, I'm a storyteller. And people started coming and saying, oh, it's World Book Day, or we're doing this thing in the woods, would you come and do it? And I realised quite quickly that to be taken seriously as a storyteller, you needed to be storytelling for adults. And I was really interested in storytelling for adults. I saw this incredible storyteller called Sandra Agard, who's now a fellow of the Royal Society of Literature. But at the time she was working for the local library service, who criminally underpaid her for her incredible work. I think she came from a Caribbean background, and she told these wonderful stories from Africa and the Caribbean in the local library, mostly for free, just for the local community. And I encountered her storytelling for adults, and I was just like, wow, this is the most amazing thing ever. I could do storytelling for adults too. But I couldn't afford to pay for a venue. I really was. You just can't imagine how broke we were when I was starting. I had no money. But what we did have was the fact that we lived in London, and London is a very interesting city. And at the end of our road, there was a very interesting place. It was a massive, what we call housing estates. I think you might call them projects in America. So it's social housing. and it had been built in the early 70s, and it was this series of enormous monolithic brutalist blocks of architecture. And in the middle of them, there were these squares which had been planted with plane trees, which had grown to a very large size since the early 70s, when there'd been, and there were all walkways, in the sky. And what had happened was the local council decided that they were an eyesore and they needed to be demolished. But the people who lived there had their communities there, their homes there, and their friends there, and they didn't want to go. And little by little, all these people had been forced out. But there were just 2 or 3 people still living in it. And therefore, they were not able to demolish it because they couldn't get rid of these people. And so what you had was blocks and blocks of derelict, empty houses, flats, apartments, I suppose you'd call them in America. And it was, people were scared to go in there because of the enclosed way that it was. It had the walkways, it had these kind of enclosed squares with all these trees in it, derelict playgrounds, all kinds of things. And I was scared to go in there at first, and then I thought, I'm just going to go. And I went in and I looked around and I was like, this is incredible. And as an illustration of how amazing the space was, it went on, before it got finally demolished, it went on to be used as a location for loads of pop videos, and also the Brad Pitt movie World War Z. I mean, it was this incredible place. And I thought, I want to do storytelling here. I'm going to make up a story about this place and I'll tell it. I'll just bring people here. We'll all sit down and I'll tell them. And so we found a place on the roof of an abandoned bakery. And I can't remember how Time Out got to hear about it. But Time Out was like Time Out London was the big listings magazine, and it was really, really big back then. And they did a blog about us and a feature about us. So we had hundreds of people trying to come to this event. And after, we'd said yes to about 100 people, they were emailing. It was free. I mean, I didn't realise that I could even charge for this. So we had all these people emailing to be sent the meeting place. And I realised I was going to have to put on an extra show. So I put on another show, like really late at night. And it was pitch dark because there was no lighting in this place. And we were on the roof. And anyway, so we did it. And it was a runaway success. So we're like, we'll do it again. And so we did it a few more times. Every time we did it, the security would get a little tighter because they realised this was, quite a dangerous place for urban explorers to come. And so they made it tighter and tighter. And by the last time that we went, they were actually filming on the night that we were telling the story. So there were all kinds of zombies walking around at the same time as we were telling the story, which really added to the atmosphere. But also the security came and stopped us 3 times and tried to kick us out. And every time we had to talk them around and say we'd only be there for a few more minutes and we were just storyteller, we were just friends, and it was nothing, And we managed to persuade the security guard by being nice to them 3 times. And after that, they put like these big barricades around and you couldn't get in anymore. But by that time, I'd had the idea that we could go to interesting and unusual places. So we did storytelling in subways underneath roads. We did storytelling in cemeteries and by the sides of rivers when the tide was out, and underneath bridges. And we went on this amazing boat called the Minesweeper, which had a massive hole in the middle that people could fall in. It wasn't very safe. A lot of this wasn't very safe, but I didn't really think about that at the time. I didn't really think about my responsibilities for health and safety. I was just so excited to be telling stories about these places, in these places. And I guess that was, and we got a lot of interest from all kinds of partners and people who saw what we were doing, thought it was cool and interesting and fun, and wanted to partner with us or book me. And that was how it started.
Amazing. So you said we, so was it, who did you collaborate with?
Yes, so me and my husband, George. So my husband is a musician, and he had just at the time released an album of songs about London's hidden ghosts and mysteries and untold stories. And he called it London Dreamtime. And we took the name London Dreamtime to sort of name our storytelling exploration type night thing. And he would always be there. He helped find the locations, and because he liked exploring too, and also he would play music. So we would alternate music and storytelling. And yeah, it was a very interesting kind of time in our creative lives, because we were going to these really strange places, collaborating with all kinds of really wonderful people, and really at the mercy of things like the weather. So we would storytell outside in the depths of winter when it was just so cold at night. You just, and people were sitting around listening for 3/4 of an hour, half an hour in sub-zero temperatures, in the pitch dark, in the freezing cold, in the middle of a forest or something like that. It was really interesting and fun. But we don't do so much of that now. We do a little, but not really so much.
It's a fascinating origin story. I've heard a lot of people's storytelling origin stories, but that's, absolutely fascinating, looking at urban spaces and telling the stories. So do you do research before you go into a place, or do you make things up on the spot, or how do you work your stories?
So I'm a real London obsessive anyway, and I did a lot of research before I did each of the stories, and I was very inspired by this guy called Chris Roberts, who did something called One Eye Grey, which was what he called a modern penny dreadful, and it was popular around about 2008. And I actually wrote some stories for it. Was a magazine that they sold in bookshops and things, and his approach to telling stories from the local area was to dive into the history, the different cultures and the layers of culture of that area, and then come up with something that was inspired by that, but wasn't like a direct retelling. So I did quite a lot of that kind of thing, where I would look at maybe communities that had settled in certain areas of London and look at their folk tales, and then weave them into something which would be uniquely Londony and kind of not quite a straight retelling of a folk tale. And then there were other times when I thought I'd just do a straight retelling of a Greek myth or a folk tale that I felt fitted the area. And sometimes we would do just a history. So we did, for example, one of the things that we did was we had a big problem in London a few years ago when the Jack the Ripper tours, which I think are a complete blight on London, and I absolutely hate them because they're just celebrating horrible violence against women, basically. But the kind of Jack the Ripper industry had decided that they wanted to open a museum of Jack the Ripper, and they had got permission by calling it a Museum of the Women of London's East End. So they'd said it's going to be a women's museum, but actually it was a museum of Jack the Ripper. And there was outrage about this. And so as a response to this, I did an event called Unripped, and it was a retelling of the childhood part of the story of one of the women who had been killed by Jack the Ripper. So it was before the Hallie Reinhold book had been released. She released a book called The Five, which is brilliant and very scholarly. But that wasn't, that hadn't been written at the time. And so it was very difficult to actually find any material about these women. It was so difficult to find material about them. And I was going here, there, and everywhere trying to get this material together. But anyway, that's an example, I guess, of a historical story, which I then told in a garden in the East End. And we all laid flowers and left a libation of gin for her, Catherine Eddowes.
Oh, that's a lovely gesture. Yeah, it's really,
Very,
yeah. So it sounds like your practice is responsive to current events and things going on in your city, which is wonderful to be able to do that. Do you have any other examples of where you've been responsive to things going on?
well, I am very aware of I'm very aware of the scene. I call it the scene or the community, the storytelling community. And one of the biggest things that I've done recently is after COVID, during COVID, all of us went online because we didn't have any choice. And then at the same time, there was a huge financial pressure put on bricks and mortar businesses. And so places that had previously been happy to have artists come and do something in return for bringing audiences in and bringing people to the venue and maybe selling drinks and stuff like that, these venues stopped doing that because they couldn't afford to do it anymore. They now had to charge. If they were a good venue, they would charge. And also places that had previously just been hanging on there, little places where you could do one-person shows or little theatres, a huge number of those closed. And the result of the combination of finding online spaces and the closure of physical spaces meant that a couple of years after the pandemic, all of London storytelling clubs had gone with no start date again. And so I'm now aware that a lot of people, were kind of biding their time and waiting to start again, but we didn't know when that was going to happen. And desperately missing storytelling in London. And what I was noticing as well was that people who had been storytelling were either moving out of London or giving up on storytelling because they couldn't afford to do it anymore. And there didn't seem to be a scene anymore. And so I crowdfunded for a new storytelling club to open that would be free. And it would just be a free open mic. So I crowdfunded to pay for the venue and to pay for somebody to run it. And we had an amazing response from the storytelling community across the world. And it was just so beautiful to see the way that storytellers supporting other storytellers and artists, as well, illustrators and authors all coming in to share, support and encourage each other to rebuild this scene in a city where if you were poor, you just couldn't afford to go to things because all the prices had hiked right up. So this was a free event where you couldn't afford to get a space. So this was a space that was provided where no one was doing open mics apart from, I should just say, Niall Morjani was running something called Tales at the Tavern, and Niall was a huge support, and we actually partnered with Tales at the Tavern, which was a little upstairs storytelling club, which is still going and is amazing. Anyway, so we crowdfunded and we've seen so much good come from that. So I'm no longer running that club, which I crowdfunded. It's now run by a team called Elephant Tales, and they do it so well. I'm going to name check them. Jenny Doe, Emma Charlton, Erin, Oliver, and Mary Honeybone, and they did just this incredible job. They've made it into something so beautiful. It's thriving. It's packed every Sunday that I go there. It's absolutely packed. And people have gone from there to make their own storytelling clubs. So it's seeded storytelling clubs around the city that are starting out, and also, of course, some of the OG storytelling clubs that we missed so much have started up again as well, and we're able to cross-fertilize with them. We're able to cross-fertilize with Tales at the Tavern, and what you've got, of course, is a thriving community, which is what we wanted. So it just absolutely makes me feel amazingly happy to see. It's a really good news story. It just started from a place of kindness where everybody was chipping in, being so generous, sharing. People donated rewards. The World Storytelling Cafe donated 3 nights in a riad in Marrakesh to one of our crowdfunders, which was actually a subsequent crowdfunder. So after we'd done the first one, we realised that we needed a second one to really reinforce what we'd done. So we actually did too. Anyway, so yes.
That sounds so inspiring. And the idea of storytelling clubs, I mean, where I live in Western Australia, there's no such thing as a storytelling club, and we're trying to get it up and running. But what a beautiful way to share stories and create community through these clubs. And so are these places where people can go and just get started with storytelling, like if they've never done it before, and they can get started?
Yes, so that was the vision of our first crowdfunder was to create a storytelling space where you could just come and try out your first stories with a supportive audience, and where people who might be interested in storytelling as an art form but hadn't really encountered it before could come and have a go. So we're very consciously not prescriptive about what storytelling is, but if people want to read something, we would let them read something. If people want to do something that's a bit more like poetry, very happy for them to do that, or to do something that's a bit dramery, maybe, but always with the idea of the traditional storytelling, oral storytelling forms at the root of it, so that if people would try lots of things, at least they would be able to see what we might think of as oral storytelling, and be able to either work that into their practice or be able to have a go at doing that themselves. And we've seen people who have come to these events who have gone on to work professionally as storytellers, or do loads and loads of amazing like full-length shows and things like that, who started off just telling a 5 or 10 minute story.
Wow.
And one of the things that I really, really like is seeing people's development. So at the start, people will sometimes send me a message, or they'll take me aside and they'll say, I don't think I can do this, it's too difficult, I'm no good, or whatever. And then to encourage them to keep persevering with it, because very often it's only a very small thing that's standing in people's way. It's just, being in front of a sympathetic audience instead of a hostile audience, or being in a space where everybody isn't talking instead of being in a space where people are talking, and little things like that, which can make you feel like a total failure, actually are just things that could be sorted out. And then seeing those people who've been like, oh, I could never do, oh, I'm no good, being amazing, is wonderful, amazing, love it.
Very rewarding. And so what sort of you've got the club and the urban things, but what other things are you doing with your storytelling?
Well, I am also, so I've also started doing programming. So last year I was blessed to be able to program two festivals of storytelling in London, which was amazing. So I was able to I like to find a kind of real mixture of people from different styles and backgrounds of storytelling, but also different levels of experience. And so we were able to take some of the people from Elephant Tales who had come through that club and program them alongside incredibly renowned storytellers like Yusuf Jallo. And we were able to do several of those. And this year, I have a very exciting focus. So I am going to be working on a personal project, which will go back and look at my time in the film industry as an electrician. So at the time, I don't know if it's obvious to say this, but I was the only woman electrician, and I was always the only woman, usually the only woman crew member. Might be a woman producer, but as far as like film crew goes, anyway, definitely always the only woman electrician. And so it would be things like I walk in with my toolbox and I'd just immediately be directed to makeup. So they go, oh, makeup's over there, love. And I'll be like, there's not makeup in this box. You know, there's like crimping shears and things like that, and meters. And I had some extremely funny experiences with some Hollywood stars when I was driving my lorry. I managed to wreck one of the days shooting for Tim Burton's film Sleepy Hollow by driving my lorry straight through the door, and various other quite incredible stories. And it really shaped me as a woman. So to live and work in that milieu constantly, and to also have to battle on behalf of my crew, because I ended up being a gaffer quite a lot. A gaffer is like, so you've got electrician, then you've got best boy, who's the sort of second to the gaffer, and then you've got the gaffer. And so I did some best boy work and I did some gaffer work. And when I was the gaffer, I would have to negotiate money for my crew. And I hated doing it. I didn't know how to do it and I didn't want to do it. And I was embarrassed about doing it because I'm British and a woman. And I didn't have a choice but not to go in really hard for my guys, because I knew that if I didn't, then I would never work again. So I ended up at one point, we were supposed to be paid overtime, but we weren't paid overtime. And we were doing this pop video in a studio in London. And the producer was going, oh, you know, Vanessa, you're doing so well with all those men, you know, telling them what to do. I've got another job coming up and it's going to be really big and we want you to gaffer it, Vanessa. We've only got a few hours extra. Can you just go and talk to them and just, you know, if they could just work through without any overtime, because the overtime for electricians, we got triple time after midnight. And so it always worked out to be an awful lot of money. They never wanted to pay it. And I thought to myself then, they're going to hate me if I go back and I say, oh, sorry, guys, I couldn't get the money this time. He just did not have it. He said, we don't have the money, he said. And then he said, thank you so much. And I was like, I just can't say, okay. And so I did the only thing that I could. I said at midnight, I said, okay, we're not getting paid anymore. I said, everybody stand by your gear. And then I just pulled the massive breaker for all the electricity in the studio. And I said, it's not going on again until we get paid. And the whole studio is complete pitch darkness. All this millions of pounds worth of kind of film cameras and everything in darkness, and then I saw like the little mag light of the focus puller that he used to check for hairs in the gate shining on there, and everyone was standing completely still. And then in the darkness, this hand tapped my shoulder, and I heard the producer whisper in my ear, "It's all right, you can have the overtime." And it was like, that's what had to happen in order to get paid the right amount. And of course, that was pretty stressful for me. But now, when I'm working as a freelance, working with people who might pay storytellers or not pay storytellers, I don't have to go through the trauma of figuring out how to ask for money because I already learned how to do it. And it's things like that, being put in what's, I guess you'd call a typically male role, that I'd like to bring out, I think, from this show that I'm doing.
Oh, that
And I
sounds
want to,
exciting.
yeah, women in history who've worked in cinema or in lighting, where they're gaslighting and stuff like that. So anyway, yeah, I'm going to be working on that this year, and I'm going to be doing the show next year, and I'm so excited.
Oh, that sounds thrilling. Ah, sounds amazing. So it sounds like you do a lot of history and biographical and a bit of folk tale. Like you mix things up. Do you have any I don't know, tips or ideas for how you blend those things together?
Oh my gosh, help. Tips or ideas for how I blend them together. Um, I think, um, well, one of the things that I find really challenging about storytelling is looking at traditional stories from other cultures. So I think that it's incredibly important that these stories get told, and that they get told well, and that the different cultures and backgrounds and traditions, and also historical stories, get told really thoughtfully. And that's a lot of work to get right. And I think the particular difficulty comes when, for example, if I'm saying I'm telling the story of Catherine Eddowes, then I've really got to honour the cadences and the echoes in that story. For example, she was working class, there was alcoholism involved, there was she was a woman, there's the effect of the Jack the Ripper industry. There's lots of things that I needed to think about when I was telling that story, and I could go and I could say I am representing Catherine Eddowes, and I'm really proud of what I'm doing. And I think that putting that work in when you want to represent something is really, really important. And so quite often, if I'm looking at I don't tell as many folk tales as probably I'd like to, because I don't feel like, not kind of professionally. I might do them in a story circle or a round or something like that, but I don't tell them professionally as much as I'd like to, because I feel like I just don't have the time or energy to put in the amount of research and effort that it would take to do them justice, to pronounce all the words correctly, to know all the different meanings and cadences, and what's understood by all the different words and the images and the ideas inside these stories. And so I tend to do quite a lot of original work, my original fiction, rather being inspired by the research that I've done and taking key ideas, but then reimagining it into something entirely different, so that I don't feel like I'm misrepresenting anything. And everybody knows what I'm offering is a fiction, not someone's artifact. So I think that, I guess, tips wise, I don't know if I can offer tips, because that's just my unique way of doing it. But I do think that I think that it's easy to get scared off of doing something which is original. But I think that, personally speaking, I love hearing people's original stories, or their really original and personal takes on stories, and allowing the kind of ideas and the concepts to bounce around a bit and be taken into by different identities. And like, so I haven't actually been to this show yet. I'm going to. Niall Morjani, storyteller, has just done something called The Green Knight, but it's gay. And I think that just sounds so fun, because obviously it's the Green Knight. So then they're going to be telling stories about the Green Knight, but also not pretending that this is some kind of historical artifact, but rather bringing their own experiences and thoughts and reflections, ideas on it. And I think that's really fun. So that's the kind of storytelling that I really get excited by, I have to say. Although actually I just get excited by all storytelling, so I don't know why I said that.
So this podcast is called The Heart of Storytelling. What do you think is at the heart of storytelling?
Connection. And wonder. So to me, we get transported. I have just changed the name of my storytelling organisation from London Dreamtime, which doesn't really represent what we do anymore, and isn't the words that I would choose now to represent what we do. And I've changed it to Connection with Wonder. And our mission is to gather people, welcome people, and transport them with stories. And I feel like stories bring people together, and they connect us with the past, they connect us with different cultures, they connect us overwhelmingly with each other, with empathy, understanding, and also with a sense of wonder and awe and magic and some other word, doesn't matter what.
Curiosity is always my go-to.
Curiosity, yeah.
Yeah.
I always put that out. I asked, I put on social media recently a sort of pyramid, and I was like, at the top is the story, and what are all the things that go towards making up the story? And I put all kinds of things in, hard work, research, and stuff like that. And 3 people messaged me to say you haven't got curiosity in there. So yeah, curiosity, so important.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's fun.
That'll do. That's a good word.
Yeah.
So why do you think we need the oral tradition in our world today?
I feel like we need each other. We need our humanity, and we need to be connecting with other people on a level which is not just practical and not combative. And so I feel there's a lot of I feel that a lot of social platforms, even when they are very gentle. So we've got a food sharing app near us called Olio, where you basically, if you've got some spare food, you list it on the thing, and they've got a little chat forum as well. And it is amazing how people start screaming at each other about things and attacking each other. And I think they did an experiment once on Twitter, when it used to be Twitter, where they created a bot and allowed it to interact with people, and quite quickly it started to change the way that it interacted, whereby it would start becoming very combative and angry and say horrible and hurtful things. And I think that the digital structures can favor being combative. Algorithms can promote dissent. And I think that the oral tradition is a way of connecting with each other on a level of our humanity and sharing things that are building and nurturing and not and can provide a different undercurrent. We desperately need this. And when we meet in person and share stories, we have our communities. Everyone's always talking about community and togetherness. And this is how you get community and togetherness, whether that's an online community around a person or an organization, or whether it's a physical community. And togetherness, we need it more than ever. We desperately need it. And that is what oral storytelling can give us.
Beautiful.
I'll die on that hill.
So you said you did went online during COVID. What sort of things do you do online in the online space?
So I don't operate very much on the online space at the moment. But when we were in, oh my goodness, we did everything. We did. We even did a pantomime. So we were commissioned by this big cybersecurity company to do various storytelling for their worldwide clients. And at Christmas time, they wanted us to do a pantomime based on their annual report. The annual report was called A Tale of Two Socks, SOC. So a sock is like a sort of unit that holds data. And so me and George created this. It was a story, of course it was storytelling, but we told the story of this pantomime, and we had these two sock puppet things with little eyes on. And we had, what we did was we got it interactive, really, really interactive, and we got the audience to get things at home. And then once we'd, and do things at home, and once we had devised it, we used it again later. So we were contacted by a special school who wanted really interactive sensory storytelling, and we did the pantomime for them. We did it live on Zoom, and we sent in advance a package of like things to make custard pies with, so they could splat each other with custard pies, and all kinds of like props that they could smell and touch and things like that. And we literally sent them this pack of things, and then all the teachers on the other end got them out, and they all splattered each other with custard pies. And honestly, it was so fun. And then after that, I really got into it, and I did a series of, must have been about 50 storytellings with Jewish elders in an old people's home on the far side of London. And at the beginning of each series of stories, I sent an enormous parcel of props that went with each story. So they were all Jewish folk tales. And, I had these like big shears, like vintage shears for the, for the tailor, and I had all these different buttons of fabrics and things like that. So all the elders could touch and react to things while we were doing it on Zoom, which was so effective. And then after that, they actually invited us to come and do it in person, but it was too far away. I mean, I couldn't go all the way over there just for half an hour. But anyway, yeah, so all kinds of, I really enjoyed that kind of trying to be as creative as possible with the online space. We did lots of audio walking tours that people could download, and then they could listen to the story as they walked around. We did loads of that.
Amazing. And do you teach storytelling at all?
I do, and I do coaching by Zoom. So that is something that I do by Zoom. So I coach people and train people, and I do a little bit of in-person stuff. If people get there's a special fund that you can get here in the UK called Developing Your Creative Practice, where if somebody wants to move on to the next level or do something new with their creative practice, they can get a little grant from the government, which is amazing. And quite often people want to add storytelling in what they do, and so they'll contact me, and I can do like a session with them to teach them about storytelling or research or things like that. So yeah,
amazing.
that's very fun.
So we're heading towards the end of the interview now. I suppose I have asked you an advice question previously, but do you have any advice for storytellers who might just be starting or want to get involved, or might be living in London and go, "Oh, where is this club?" And
Oh, thank you.
yes, yeah,
Yes, so I would say we've got, if anyone is living in London, they should definitely search up Elephant Tales or Space for Storytelling, which is the free storytelling training that I do every month, or they should look for Tales at the Tavern. And all of those spaces are free, welcoming, and inclusive, and gentle as well, and are really good for people who want to start. But as far as people wider afield who want to start storytelling, I always think that the best way to do it is to find a sympathetic, and I'm sure you'll agree with me, find a sympathetic listener, someone who is interested in what you have to say and is prepared to sit and listen to you telling your first stories. Don't try and go too long, maybe, do 5 minutes. And I just think, the listener or listeners is really the important thing, because when you're starting out, if you get the wrong audience, if you accidentally, like my mum, bless her, she's absolutely incredible journalist, support, human being. I love her. But her and my dad, they do just talk through every storytelling session that I do, whatever it is. Early, and particularly at the beginning, they really did, and they just didn't, they didn't seem to think it mattered if they got up and made a cup of tea in the middle or wandered in and out and stuff like that. And it was so disheartening. I thought, my own mother doesn't want to listen to my story. I must be so bad. But then when I went to places where people were used to listening to stories, and those first few stories where you're not quite sure how to capture an audience, and you might get a few things wrong or go on a tiny bit too long or something. But they'll be sympathetic and they'll listen to you and support you. It's so important to get those good listeners at the beginning. So that's what I'd say to people.
yeah.
Don't discourage yourself by giving yourself a bad listener at the start.
It's okay if your mum talks through it. You're still okay.
You're still okay, exactly. Yeah, that's right. In fact, I think, people like that who are closest to us often are the ones who are least likely to care and listen. My husband, George, he's always creating wonderful songs. And then he will say to me, "Can I play you this new thing I'm working on?" And I'm just like, oh, I can't keep on listening to this stuff, because, it's really personal, and, I don't want to say the wrong thing and put him off or upset him or something. So, the stress is on. And I can really understand why the people who are closest to us are not always going to be the ones who are going to be the best listeners.
Plus, it's often a work in progress as well. If you're,
of course it is,
telling
yeah.
something, it's you're in the process of developing an art, like an artifact, and it's not always the best time. So you've been fabulous today, Vanessa. I've really enjoyed chatting with you and hearing about how you started, and I'm just so thrilled by what you've shared. It's just great. How can people find you if they want to find out about you and the work that you do?
Well, they can just do a Google for Vanessa Woolf and they will find me straight away. So we're in the process of switching websites. So I'm currently at londondreamtime.com, but they'll also be able to find me at connectionwithwonder.com as well, in a few weeks, hopefully. But at the moment, if you just search for Vanessa Woolf, you really can't miss me.
Yeah, fantastic. And you're on social media as well, so people can find you there. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. And if they search for Connection with Wonder on Instagram or Facebook or Blue Sky,
dipping your toes in there.
having a go at Blue Sky and Mastodon. So thank you, Alyssa, so much for having me. It's been really fun getting a chance to talk about myself.
If you've enjoyed the podcast and would like to support me to continue the work that I'm doing, please head to buymeacoffee.com/Alyssa Curtain and make a donation or sign up for a subscription. This is a passion project, and as such, it is voluntary. So your donations make it easier for me to continue this work. Thank you for your support. Well, that's our episode for today. I hope you've enjoyed learning about storytelling, and folktale, fairytale, myth, legend, or personal tales, wonder tales, all sorts of stories, and the art of storytelling and why we really need to continue using it today. You can find more information about me at alyssacurtain.com or at Alyssa Curtain Stories on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube and TikTok. I hope that you can find your heart in storytelling.